Hi, I'm Candy Valentino, and for the last 25 years, I've been building businesses and generating wealth, starting my first business when I was just 19. Since then, I've gone on to build, scale, acquire, and exit businesses, all while investing in real estate and building financial freedom. Now it's all about you and why we're bringing you the real story behind building businesses and generating wealth here at The Candy Valentino Show. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Candy Valentino Show. I'm so grateful that you get to listen in to this conversation with someone who's been on her own entrepreneurial journey and now is able to help so many other business owners. So I know you're going to take a lot of value from this. So Jasmine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Candy. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so glad you were able to come. And we were chatting a little bit before we turned cameras on. But I want to talk about a few things. I want to definitely talk about your story as an entrepreneur, because I think so many people can relate to starting one thing and then evolving into something else and pivoting and growing and changing. And then I also want to unpack a lot of what you know about the social media world, because you really have, you took a set of the market with photographers and really showed them how to market their services, charge for what they're worth and what their services were worth. So I want to unpack that a little bit. But as everyone's tuning in, I like to give them a quick piece of value in the beginning. So is there something that you can share from your experience of how entrepreneurs can show up their services, show up their products more on social media in order to grow and scale?
Yes. So I've always maintained, and every year as I've progressed in business, I've started to realize that it had less to do with education, knowledge, ability, wherewithal, support. These are all the typical things that somebody looks at and says, well, if I had that, then I would do what I'm supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And it was never about knowing what to do, because I could sit here and we could talk about the newest, coolest, the latest, the oldest, the best, the weakest strategy. But without having the right mindset of applying a strategy, the point is moot. So let's start off with where I think every conversation should start off with, and that is to deeply understand that the thing that stops us isn't a lack, but a complete ownership of how we compare ourselves to others. And so we talk about this and we're like, oh, we're talking about social media. And all of a sudden it's like, everyone's like, this is not the show for me. If you are watching and you're hearing this and you are questioning yourself, maybe perhaps I do compare, or maybe I'm not even aware of it. And so what I have discovered is that comparison takes the shape of three ways: mental, physical, and emotional. Mental. Well, I'm not them. So I'm not Candy. So I'm too tall. I'm too short, I'm too black, I'm too white, I'm male, I'm female, I'm rich, I'm poor. I don't vacation in Positano, France, or Italy. Maybe I should do my geography. I don't have those things. And I don't wear those clothes. I don't have that watch. I don't look that way. Therefore, I can't. And so there's this mental, I am not them. But if we were to realize that we each have a unique ability for us to show up and do something in our own unique way. So you and I could say the exact same thing, but somebody needs to hear from you. And somebody needs to hear it from me. And whoever's watching, somebody needs to hear it from you. And then the second type of comparison is going to be mental. And we don't actually wake up in the morning and say, I'm not enough to do this thing. It's sneakier than that. What happens is that people will wake up and say, well, I have this God-sized dream, but I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if it's in me. And my response to that is, you wouldn't have the dream if you didn't have the capacity in you. You didn't wake up this morning and say, you know what I want to do? I want to win the NBA championship. You didn't.
No.
Because it's not in you. But you woke up and you said, there is a calling, a big calling, a huge thing in my life. And even though it scares me a little bit, I'm going to pursue it, because if I got it, it's in me. And then the third thing is physical. I don't live in that house. I don't have that zip code. I don't drive that car. And so because I'm not on a private jet traveling the world, nobody really cares about the content. It's not flashy. I'm in a dark kitchen in my apartment with no windows in the city. How can I compare? And if we were just to say that there is somebody who is doing less, there's somebody who's doing more with less. Mm-hmm. And so if we were just to have a conversation about business, about social media, about weight loss, about money, about finances, if we were just to say that in this moment, I'm going to pause from comparing myself and simply accept the fact that I am doing the best I can with what I have. Everything thereafter comes in, how might I make a 1% change? A 1% change. A 1% change in business, in social media, in weight loss, in relationships, in anything you apply it to. So that's where I would always go back. Every conversation is, how do we separate ourselves from comparison to actually taking action?
So you think a lot of the inaction comes from people's mindset or lack thereof?
100%.
So if somebody's sitting or watching this, listening, and they're like, okay, I know I'm going to be successful. I want to be successful. I'm willing to do the work. They have that winner's mentality, right? They want to do the work. They want to do it, but they don't know what to do. Like, yes, I want to be a millionaire. I want to build an 8-figure company, but I don't know what to do. So they're sitting here thinking, it's not just my mindset because I freaking want it. I just don't know what's next. What would you tell them?
Try anything. It is the act of saying, Candy Valentino is at step 1, and Candy Valentino knows and believes that step 10 is in her. It's done. So what happens is we start thinking about step 7 and step 6, but the only way you get to step 2 is actually working through step 1. What do I do? Anything. Anything. If you see yourself crossing a marathon line, what do? Imagine yourself crossing the marathon line, and then you take a walk around the block. And then you take a jog around the block. And the next day you decide you're going to do 2 blocks. You're going to jog. And then you're going to start saying over a little bit of time, I'm actually not pacing the way I should if I wanted to complete a marathon. So then you get to assess after doing the work. The work leads to the next best step. So if you are stuck and you don't know what to do, pick something, pick anything. Take your best guess at what you should be doing next. Set a time frame and then triple it. And then zip a lip, do the work for that. So for instance, let's just take marketing your business. And let's say you pick a social platform that you're like, I want to go all in. It will take longer than you think. It will look different than you imagine. But on the back work of consistency, you're going to get everything that you want. So if you want results on Instagram and you remain dedicated to show up consistently, rain, sun, darkness, highs, lows, negativity, positivity, but you stay consistent and you do that for 14 months, 3 to 5 times a week, then we have a conversation. Until then, there is no opinion that you should be having because we haven't done enough testing or the work to determine if you are, in fact, doing the thing you should be doing. But I promise you, if you show up 3 to 5 times a week on Instagram, you're going to be getting enough feedback to say, oh, well, people weren't really vibing with that kind of post, but they seem to be really liking this one. Let me see if I can try that again. And you simply start repeating the stuff that you see is getting results. Same thing with weight loss. Oh, when I eat pizza, I don't feel that great. I'm feeling a little stuffy. But if I decide to do a 3-day juice cleanse, I'm seeing results and I feel great. So maybe I should try that again. If having a communication with your partner, you're like, this conversation, it's not going to be easy, but I'm going to sit through it. And then afterwards, I feel better. It is just the act of consistency, patience, and doing it again and again and again. And not having an opinion about the results until you've done it long enough for you to actually, with veracity, look back and say, that was effective or that was not effective. People think that they will get results in 30 days, anything they do. Relationship, life, social media, business, and that is not the case. And you know that so well.
Yeah, it's great. So someone's watching. They're like, okay, so I'm going to start posting on social. I'm going to just get the data and review. But let's speak to the person who doesn't have the time. They have more month than money. They have more confusion than clarity. They're not exactly sure what they should be doing, but they know they should do something. Is there something that you did starting your photography business, starting to build a team, or even transitioning into this last chapter that you've been in, that you have found, whether it's their right step or not, but that you have found that has been sticky for you or that has worked for you really well in your business?
Okay. I'm going to tell, before I get there, I want to add a little bit of clarity because when you look at the journey of any entrepreneur, you're going to see different variations and pivots. And so in the highest level, I began a career without, I said I wanted to be a photographer and I didn't own a camera. So I had this dream and I believe I wouldn't have been given the dream if it wasn't already in me. And so my husband gifted me a camera from Best Buy, a very simple camera, bought off the shelf. And I started a business and I had no reason starting a business. And yet I did. I dropped out of law school. And within my first year, I had made $100,000. Now somebody watching this is like, bless your heart, $100,000 in a year. Okay. But you have to understand that I am the daughter of an immigrant. My dad is from Mexico. My mother is from Puerto Rico. My dad didn't make $100,000 in 3.5 years for a family of 7.
Yeah.
So for me to do that, it just felt like I had this moment where I'm just like, are we going to Red Lobster tonight? Because we're going to take Olive Garden. It's like, get the breadsticks. It's on me. It was like this whole shift in what was possible. And so there is that version of myself. And then I started creating online resources helping other people.
Mhm.
And then businesses started saying, oh, can you create content for us? To which I said, yes. The answer was always, can I create a different revenue stream?
Yeah.
Yes, I can. So I started figuring that out. And then they asked me to start consulting with their businesses and can you train our marketing team and our branding team? So then I said, yes. And then I realized that I wanted a way to scale what I was doing because I didn't want to create an agency. And I was on the path of creating an agency.
Yeah.
And so then I ventured off into the world around 2016 of creating my first online course. And then that brought in another 7-figure revenue stream. And I started creating courses. Then I created a membership. And then I created a SaaS tech company in 2020. In every iteration of that career, where I had more time than I had more money, and then I have more money than I have time, and then I have more resources than I have money. So all of these different iterations of the peaks and valleys, I could always look back at the singular through line of time being a resource that we never get back. We could find ways to make more money.
Oh, yeah.
We could find ways to make more resources, and we can't multiply time. So when somebody says, Jasmine, I just don't have time, I'm going to invite them into saying, well, if you say you don't have time, you're right. I am not here to convince you otherwise. And if you're sitting here saying that you would like a way to find time, to reprioritize, I would say, you're right. And so what got me down the path of thinking that my words are actually true, whatever I decide to be true, I'm going to show up in that way. I'm going to act as if it is the truth. And so somebody once told me, instead of saying I don't have time, I swapped it with that's not important to me. And then I started to realize where my priorities actually were. And if I said that's not important to me and it was true, okay, I'm doing the best I can. That's not for me right now. But when I started applying things like I don't have time to market my business, that was patently untrue. So if I needed to make time, then I needed to shift and reprioritize the things that I was doing. And unfortunately, people have to cut and make changes in their life, in their business. Some people are okay with it and some people are not. I have no opinion the way that people make their decisions. But when you stay in ownership of that decision, because people will say, well, I don't have time. It's they, that, them. If only that client said yes. If only the bank said this. If only that VC capital saw, that VC company saw that they can give me capital and I can go. If only that happened then. And if we do that, if only I had an extra time in my day, if only I had an extra 6 figures in my bank account, then we remain powerless. We give our power away to things we cannot control. But if we were to simply say, that is not a priority for me right now. So I will be very honest. I don't talk about it all that much, but here's going to be a great opportunity. Is when I decided that things had to shift in my life, it came at the cost of building out new relationships. I was in a season of no new relationships. I had my core group of friends. I had my family, and I had the organizations I was involved with. And anything beyond that became a no. And that is not okay for a lot of people. But that was where I decided to draw a line and say, if I need more time, then any new type of social things are going to have to be cut away. But again, it can come in different ways.
Yeah, well, I love that you touched on that because I think it's so important. When you talked about in the beginning of your business, you kept saying yes to everything.
Yes.
And anyone watching, if you're doing less than 3 million, definitely less than $1 million, you should be saying yes to everything. But at some point, the only way that you're going to be able to expand is by elimination. And by saying no and having guardrails around your day. So I love that you shared that because you need to say yes, 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 yes as things evolve to get growth. But then at some point you have to be strategic about what you say yes to, because everything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else, whether 100%. It's your time or an opportunity or a relationship. So I am 100% that person that I say no probably 9 times to for every one yes, because I know what that's going to take bandwidth. And we can always make more money. We can always develop something new, but we don't get that time back. And I love this other thought that you just kind of made me think of, which is when we are saying that we don't have time, typically it's we have money. And when we say that we don't have money, it's typically because we don't have time. But when you don't have either, you don't have priorities. So to really shift that if you're saying like, I don't have any time, okay, well now you need to outsource. You don't have any money, you need to double down on your time and double down on your efforts. So I love that that's just like a thought of reprioritizing what you want to achieve. And for wherever you are, because some 100%. People are in the position that they need to grow. And some need to actually say no to a lot so that they can really scale.
Have you been at a spot in your business where you said, I need to slow down before I speed up?
always, but I
Yep.
intentionally do that.
100%.
So I teach this, I do this, and it's all about when you get through certain milestones in your business, the ones, the threes, the eights, and then once you get past 8 million, they're broken down a little bit further. But the ones you've got to be able to pause. I call it the pause and look back so that you can rebuild. Because otherwise what
Yes, and
happens,
amen.
nobody talks about this.
Right.
They blow through
Yes.
all of these milestones
Yes.
and all of a sudden, and the data supports it, that they'll be going and doing $5 million, but they didn't fix a few things at 3. And then they end up losing half of their business
Yep.
because they didn't have legal, they didn't have IP, all this stuff. So I think it's so important to be intentional about
Yes.
your build and to really pause. And I love how you jumped through a lot of the different things that you did when you were going to establish a new line of revenue or a new vertical inside of your business. Were those moments that you paused and you started to evaluate the business, and did you eliminate things, or have you just always been adding this entire time?
Great question. It was, and it follows very closely to the 138.
Mhm.
And so the first thing I let go of was in 2016. And that's when I decided that all revenue that was being brought in from our actual physical services of being photographers. So I say my husband and I are business partners, high school sweethearts. I married out of my league. We were traveling the world. We were getting awards for our work. And I say that not because of a humble brag, but to understand that it was so much a part of my identity. And there's a beautiful thing about identity, and then there's a not so beautiful thing about the identity that is like camouflaged as security.
Mhm.
And I had to go through this big metamorphosis of who am I if I'm not with my camera? Because my camera. So I grew up wildly overweight. I was obese as a child. We were very poor. I am still a very high introvert, and so I was 25 years old before I ever even had the idea that I could start a business. It was so crazy to me, Candy. I'm like, no, not me. Like, no, of course not. I have a hard time talking to people. I have a hard time ever, like, me trying to conduct an entire art-directed photography shoot. No, of course not. And then I started asking myself, but could I?
Mhm.
What would it look like? And so then as I would go through every iteration of the career, I would have to go back and start asking, what is the possibility threshold here? And because it became so part of my identity around 2016, where I said, if I am dedicated to clients and if I am wanting to underpromise and overdeliver, and if I want them walking away thinking that this was the most spectacular thing that I've ever experienced, it was in my best business interest to say, if I can't deliver that, even though we have a powerful revenue stream, it's time to close the door.
Mm.
And I look at creators like Jay-Z. I look at Dave Chappelle. And they left when it didn't make sense.
Mhm.
Michael Scott from The Office. At the peak of The Office,
Mhm.
they decided we're going to close. And so there's something so powerful. And it's only now that I look back and I really am like, I'm so appreciative of who I was in 2016 because it's like I can go back and I'm like, I know you're worried and I know you're afraid and I know it doesn't make sense, but job well done for saying you left it better than how you found it. My life, my career, and hopefully the industry. And so that was the first time that we actually had let something go, closed revenue stream. And so since then, it has always been, okay, if it is not going to serve us in a multiple X possibility, then let's start focusing on ways that we could start focusing on scale.
I love that. And I just did that myself, and it made no sense. In my mind, it made complete sense because I was like, this isn't scalable, this isn't sustainable, and this isn't something that I could easily exit. So and even though it did a lot of good, right? And I think that's a hard part for entrepreneurs to know. So can you share a little bit about what work you had to do between the 6 inches between your ears to really think about, because it's not just what you're walking away from, it's what you then have to say no to that you can't even fathom, right? Like, I think that's the important part is like by keeping that without you knowing what it was yet at that version of Jasmine, you were saying no to things along the way. They just haven't presented themselves yet. So what were some of the things that you had to work through with you and your husband to say, hey, we're leaving X amount of dollars of revenue behind, but you don't maybe fully know what's next?
So I made the active decision to completely stop, halt, like, we're done, like we are, like, nada, no thoughts around what we will say no to, and focused entirely on what can we now say yes to. And it's where you put your focus is what actually sprouts. My friend Rory Vaden says it best, diluted focus gets diluted results. And so I was like, well, then I want concentrated focus on the thing I want. And the more that you focus on the things that you want, on new opportunities, on being open, the more they come. Not because they didn't exist before, but now all of a sudden you're cutting out any other noise that's getting in the way of seeing the thing that's in front of you.
Yeah, it's like the white space. It's like you're creating more white space for things to come in. Yeah,
Yes.
It's such a beautiful thing. And it is so scary for most entrepreneurs to do. But I think it's just another testament of why it's so important. If you wouldn't have dropped that line of revenue in 2016, would you be working with a SaaS company now?
No, I don't think so.
No. Tell us, what is that? What is the...
So, okay, so the way that it started was as I started creating courses for business owners, I started realizing that a lot of people were not completing courses. And so part of the reason they weren't completing courses is because they wanted continuing aspects, they wanted fresh, they wanted motivation, they wanted to be part of a community, they wanted ongoingness. And so then we then created a membership. So ongoing micro pieces of content, updating challenges. And then I realized that there was a friction point between the membership of creating online marketing and scopes and new opportunities, and then not having a way to actually implement it on social. So then in 2020, we made the distinct decision to create a tech SaaS platform that would integrate with all social platforms. So what we were teaching and what we were doing in the community that we were creating for our challenges, for our scopes, for our big projects, would then be able to go through and put into a content calendar, schedule it out, get going, and then we get to share in the community what's happening. And so that was the iteration from all of those things. But when you are constantly tied up in too many things, you can't put 100% of your focus or the vast majority of focus on where it is. And so when you look at two opportunities, two beautiful, amazing opportunities, it became very clear that one was scalable and one was new and one was challenging. And as being a bootstrapped female Latina founder, it's like we're basically brown little unicorns. We don't exist, Candy. And so I was just like, well, you know, life is short. My mom had a relapse of brain cancer when I was 25 years old. And thank God she is still here with us. But when she had a relapse, I was in law school and I walked out. I just realized that life was too short. And when she had brain surgery and we were in her room and it was New Year's Eve and she was in ICU and the conversations that we were having were not about the things that she had done. We were talking about the things that she had not done. And I was 25 years old and she was 50 years old. And I thought to myself, my God, if I die when I'm 50, I don't want to sit here like my mom and say, I wish I wrote a children's book. I wish I took a first class flight. I thought to myself, why can I not at least try to do everything my heart desires and then fail miserably along the way? And so that on my deathbed, I was like, remember that time I tried to start a business? Do you remember that time I tried to bootstrap a tech company? Do you remember that time I hired a CTO and I didn't know a single line of code? Do you remember when I said I wanted to be a photographer and I didn't own a camera? Do you remember when somebody hired me as a consultant when I had never done consulting? And I think to myself, how many times can I look back at my life and say, I am the least qualified to do this thing? And so I want people to look at me and say, that girl can do that? I can do something now. Yes. Please watch unqualified, unprepared, unfunded, unconnected people doing the very thing you want to do. Because I am living proof that you don't have to be the best, you don't have to be the smartest, you don't have to be the richest. You just have to do. Can you just be okay with what failure looks like? And instead of saying I'm failing, I'm actually just learning. I'm learning what not to do next time. Can we be okay saying I am okay with people having an opinion? Because everybody's going to have an opinion. Candy, if you decide to sit on the couch tomorrow, or if you decide to go on a 10-mile run, they're going to have an opinion. If you decide to have a slice of pizza or have a green smoothie, they're going to have an opinion. If you decide that you're going to build $100 million business, or you want to sit here and apply for welfare, they're going to have an opinion. So people are going to have an opinion either way. Let them have an opinion, and you do you. And if you fail miserably and get back up, because people love the audacity to get back up after you've been knocked down. Why not have that be your story?
So good. You know, there's very few people I've talked to that is doing it for the right reason. And I don't mean that to maybe sound the way that it sounds. I don't know how to articulate it well enough, but for you to be willing to just try because you want to be able to sit, whether it's 50 or 90 or 150, and look back at all of those things, like, that's how I feel. That's how I feel when I exited my company. That's how I felt when I started something new. That's how I felt when I spoke on stage. You don't know until you do it, but I'll be damned to wonder what it feels like.
That's right.
I'd rather be like, oh, I didn't like that, or that sucked really bad, or oh my God, please don't ever do this again. Right? But you don't know until you do it. And I think there is a privilege that exists that when we do have success, we get the ability to try some of these things. But I was doing this, and it sounds like you were too, when we didn't have a dime to our name. And I think that that's what's so powerful, and it levels the playing field, that no matter where someone's starting right now or what they think they want to do, if you just understand that everybody started, sure, there's probably a handful of people that started with rich parents, but
Yeah.
most of us didn't.
Right.
And we were still able to try. But if you think about the 80-year-old version of you and not something that's going to happen in 8 months from now, I think it gives you a different level of resolve.
Yes.
And that is so flippin' powerful.
Yes.
Like it's like a rocket ship.
Yes. Well, speaking of, okay, so beautiful. Let's add the juxtaposition. You said it's like a rocket ship. And Tony Robbins mentions a rocking chair. It's the rocking chair exercise. And he says, when you are 85 years old and you're sitting on a rocking chair out on your porch or on a deck, and you're thinking about to your 38-year-old self, what are you proud that you did in that moment?
Yep.
When you think back to your 27-year-old self, your 43-year-old self, so whatever age you are, fill that in. And when you are 85 and you're looking back at the decisions that you're making now, are you going to ask yourself, I'm so happy you stayed stuck in the job that you were miserable at. I'm so happy you stayed in a relationship with a narcissist who had you questioning your reality. I'm so happy you played small so that your kids felt safe.
Yep.
When you realize that playing small will make nobody feel safe. Everybody feels unsafe when you play small. And so I always think about, yes, that immediate feeling of rocket ship now and the rocking chair later.
Yeah. Yeah, because those are the moments you're going to look back on and be
Absolutely.
proud of. Like when I look back, and I'd love to hear this from you, when you look back to 16-year-old, 21-year-old, 25-year-old Jasmine, and you're just like, you know what? That didn't work out the way, but you tried it. That didn't go the way you had intended, but you did it.
Yep.
Like that's what I'm most proud of when I look back. And when I exited my last company, I had 3 months. I was just telling them, my producer this. I was like, I had 3 months. I thought I was going to like move to the beach and totally chill because I had acquired everything that I thought I wanted. I lasted 3 months because I was like, this isn't what life's about. Like, I don't want to be 85 and think that for the last 40 years, I just sat on my hands. And when I have all this information that I can share and help people with. So I think it's interesting that when you do it from that lens, number one, it's easier to make better decisions. But number two, I think it's easier to go all in, because if you're not worried about what the other person's going to say and you're worried about the 90-year-old rocking chair version of you, it's like I feel like we get a different level of purpose with what we're doing every day.
100%. In fact, I wasn't planning on talking about it, but I actually had a friend. He started a business when I was just becoming a photographer, and it was a software company, and I loved what they were doing. And I remember at this time, I'm creating content to help other photographers. And so I was like, I really like this platform. I think it's really great. This is how I'm using it in my business. And they invited me to go on a national tour. So they said, we're getting a tour bus, go on a 25-city tour. And I was just like, why not? My husband, my dog got on this tour bus. We went around 25 different cities, states, and we met up for lunch or breakfast today. And he ended up dropping me off here. I said, you know, Todd, if I can go back to the 2008 version of myself, and I was telling her that I was in Phoenix and I don't have one business. I have multiple businesses and I have a team, and I'm going to be on the Valentino show, and you're going to meet your friend Todd, who saw something in you before you saw it in yourself. And I'm still married happily to my husband, and we have a daughter. If I could go back, oh man, ooh, a little lump in my throat. Man, Candy, I wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It's just it's too big. That's too big for me to dream. And I told him, in 20 years, I'm going to sit with you, Todd, and I'm going to look back at the 2024 version of Jasmine and say, it took longer than you think, than you thought. It looks different than you thought. And it's better than you think.
Yeah.
So it's like all of that, all of that, all of it. That's what I look the most forward to, is just not stopping and saying, I'm so proud of the way that you showed up, even when things were so hard. And even when you felt like the biggest failure.
Yeah. It's like, what can you say yes to try?
Yes.
And it almost, if you look at it, like if we ask better questions, we get better results. So it's like, if you just said, what could I say yes to try? If you're in a position that you don't love where your life is right now, obviously if you're super clear and focused, then you may not want to be diverting into new things. But if you're not quite there yet, and you just look at it differently, what can I say yes to get a result? Like, I think that's what's beautiful about now in my 40s as opposed to my 20s, that you have more life data to be able to look back, and you're able to see all of those decisions. They didn't crumble you. They didn't destroy you. The person that you thought was going to talk about, you don't even know where they are right now in life, right? Like the bully that you had or whatever.
Yes.
But until you have the life data that supports that, every moment seems so crazy, like so heavy.
Right.
But when you realize, when you look back, that all of those things weren't really, they were insignificant in the scope of things. And what you said, everyone's going to have an opinion. If we color our hair, we're vain. If we don't, we've let ourselves go. Like, you can't win. So if you just, what can you say yes to and try? It may embark in a totally different journey than what you thought you were going to achieve.
Yes. I heard Mel Robbins said it really well. She's like, if you feel like, if you are stuck at a place in your life, but you're not quite sure, well, what do I do? What is it next? She said that there's one of two paths. You can look at people who inspire you. She's like, and or you can look at people who you're jealous or envious of. Because it's a calling. You wouldn't be, I am not envious of LeBron James. I'm like, I love the way he plays and it's phenomenal. I love all of it. I'm not envious of him because I don't think that I could ever do what he does. And I'm not jealous or envious of Sheryl Sandberg. That's just not the scope. But there are other people that I look at and I'm like, I'm so inspired by what it is you do. And maybe if I was being real honest with myself, there is that twinge of, I want that. That is a very good indication that is where your calling could start moving you towards. So if you're looking and you see the Candy Valentino show and you say, I'm simultaneously inspired by her and I'm simultaneously a little bit like, oh, I want to swap my face with hers. That's okay. Own it. What can you do right now? You can have your own show. You can have your own dang show by putting up your phone, by putting up a laptop and you going live. And you build an audience. That way, you're bulletproof. You build an audience on nothing, with the same tools that everybody else has, and you win, game over. You're bulletproof. So when you see the Candy Valentino show and you want what she has, open up your phone and open up your laptop. Nobody's gonna show up. And you're gonna be talking to yourself. But then on that replay, if you save it, one person might watch. And then after 3 months, somebody might join live. And that person, when you have practiced crossing your T's and dotting your I's and your elocution and your points and serving, that one person's gonna tell another person. And those 2 people are gonna tell 2 people. And those 4 people are gonna tell 4 people. And that, you don't build an audience, you build a community. It is, how bad do you want that thing? Take exactly what you have and make it work. The less you have and you find a way to win, bulletproof, game over.
Yeah, and I'd like to, one additional thing with that, because this is what I think people do. They hear that and they're like, oh yeah, I want that. And then they go do that. And then they realize they don't like that. And then they feel guilty about, oh my gosh, I thought I wanted that. Now I'm doing it. Now I'm creating it. Now people are watching it, but I hate this. It's okay to say no.
Oh, it's great.
It's okay to walk
Congratulations.
away. Yeah.
You have a tool. You have a tool in your toolkit. You have a tool in your toolkit. You just cross-trained a different part of your mind, your soul, and your body to do something that when you find the thing that is 100% your wheelhouse, you got that little tool. So wherever you are in your future life, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I can pull up my camera. I can go live for 5 minutes and say the thing that I want to do. That's not what I do anymore, but I can do it. That's a tool.
Right. Exactly.
Congratulations, you won.
Yep, it's a talent that you build. And
Yes.
so I find so many people, they'll at least have the courage to do the thing, and then they realize the thing that they're watching somebody else is not for them.
Yes.
Give yourself permission to stop.
Yes. Oh my God,
like it is,
please.
right? Like it's okay. I see so many, they're like, oh, I thought I wanted a podcast. Now I have a podcast. I hate it because I always have to show up for it. I'm like, well, stop flipping doing it. They're like, well, I put all this time in. I'm like, so do you want to put more time into something that you've already put too much time into, as opposed to just cutting it so you can enjoy life? Like if it's not giving you the result that you want, either in wealth, health, or happiness, just move along.
Amen.
So I love that. I think that's so important too. And this is why it's important to have these conversations, because some people might be where they just want to try something and they need the courage to try. And some might have tried something and they need the courage to quit.
Ooh, good.
Yeah.
Really good.
So I love that.
Really good.
Share a little bit about, I would love to just know, because you talked a little bit about a process before we started recording that you do every year. Where you come up with a word. And Catherine Gordon and John Gordon do this all the time too. And I was just speaking it with John Gordon on his at his event. And he was sharing how they do this one word. Now, I personally have never done this, so I can't speak to it. So I would love for you to share how you establish this one word, and if you feel that it's helped you in business or is it in life, and in what kind of way that it's been beneficial.
So this sounds very like woo, but it is a word that becomes an embodiment of the year. And I started really focusing on getting a word around 2017. And it was when I started getting very serious about journaling. Now, people hear that and they're like, I can't even take a shower before 5 p.m. Who the heck is journaling? I will set just a couple times a year to actually do deep journaling. Like just sit it out. Like, so this is not a regular thing, with the exception of every single day I get up, I pray, I read, I journal 5 minutes. And it's just like what happened the day before, what I'm thankful for. And it's a 365-day devotional. And I've been keeping it for years now. So I go back and I get to start seeing trends in my life. Trends of weakness, trends of power, trends of dependability, trends of sadness, peaks, valleys, and what that happened. And so then all of a sudden, when I started doing this like pretty serious practice of understanding who I was, regulating my nervous system, building proof. I wanted to stack proof that it will be okay. Because like you had said, there are some things that happen in our life and it just rocks you straight out. And you're like, I don't know if I can ever recover. I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. Everything I thought was true is not true. I'm starting to doubt my capacity. And so then if we get to start stacking proof that it will be okay, stacking proof that we have the capacity to succeed, stacking proof that when the chips are down, you will still show up, stacking proof that even though people turn their backs on you, you're still going to be okay, stacking proof that if you don't have money, you will find a way to win. So all of this just became ways for me to stack proof. And over time, I began to stack proof. And then at the end of the year, as I started just taking time to journal and figure out what are my goals for the next year, I started really doing a deep dive of what is a word that will embody the coming year. So I am a woman of faith. And so I know, but you don't have to be. You can just simply set an intention and simply say, okay, I want to start thinking about things that are the things I'm facing, things I'm feeling. Who do I want to become? That rocking chair version of myself. What characteristics do I want to look back and say, you own that? If I want, when I'm 90 years old, to say, Jasmine, I'm so proud of you for being courageous, then what skill must I hone? Courage. What character trait should I hone? Courage. If in the future I want to say that I'm so proud of how you loved yourself, one of my words of the year was self-love. And I struggled with that, Candy. There was nobody meaner in my life than me. If I ever heard anybody speaking to somebody else the way I spoke to myself on a daily basis, I would shank them. Don't you ever speak to a creature of God in that way. And I would wake up and say, you're so stupid. Why did you just make that? What, like, idiot. You should have seen that coming. And that's the narrative I had in mind, how sick and toxic I was making myself weaker. And so the year was stopping the negative self-talk and choosing self-love. Another year was surrender. I fight for everything. And then I started thinking that, oh, it's my brute strength that will get me to where I want to go. Oh, is it really? How about doing less and getting more? Is that a possibility? And so whenever in that year, if I felt like I'm gonna push through and I'm gonna prove, I would be like, there's a different way. What does surrender look like? And I started realizing how powerful I was in the surrender. Not weakness, meekness. And so this year, I'm focusing on the word. And when the word came to me, it was around November, early December. And the word independence. When I started thinking to myself, what characteristics do I want? I want to look back and say, I'm so proud of how you were as an independent thinker and thought leader, believer, business person, that you can maintain your independence even if it doesn't make sense. Now, to be clear, I've never cared what people think about me. Like, I don't care if you like me or you don't like me. I want us to have a good, powerful relationship. I want us to trust each other. That's when I know I got an ally. Trust you? Good. You don't need to like me. So the independence was, I'm worried what people will think about me. The independence simply came from the fact of, can I get poured into? And then I could say, despite what anybody thinks or says, I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to stand by that decision. And I am only responsible to myself. And up until now, you know, it's early 2024 and I don't think that's a strong suit of mine. And so the end of 2024, I want to look back and say, I'm so proud of the independent, thoughtful, I don't give a rip what you think. And I'm still going to move forward because I am responsible just to me. That's what I hope I say at the end of the year.
I love that. Well, we'll stay friends through 2024 and I can help you with that.
I know. Yes. Yes. Before the cameras turn on, Candy was just like, girl, I am so independent.
I am
like,
so you.
Osmosis. Let me just sit next to you and like come into me.
Oh my gosh. I probably need my word needs to be whatever the opposite of that would be. Probably need to tone that down a little bit. But I love that because like you said, you've been with your high school sweetheart.
Yes.
You're a twin.
I'm a twin.
Identical?
We are fraternal, but she can walk in, Candy, and you'd be like, Jasmine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay. So that close.
We look very much alike.
And so you've always probably felt comfortable to have somebody else to run ideas past and talk to.
Yes.
And are your parents still together?
My parents are still together.
Oh my gosh.
They are like the living embodiment of a good, strong relationship, people who push through like, very difficult times. But again, that's been modeled.
That's right.
And we're at a restaurant and see, this is a very good clue. This is a clue that when you're kind of like honing in on a word, that when you see it manifested in something or someone else, it kind of prickles. So my mom's done it my whole life. And I never noticed it until I started grappling with this word of independence. And so my mom will say, my dad's name is Pancho, Pancho, can you ask the waitress for a fork? And the waitress is right there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, what? You got a mouth, baby.
Yeah.
Go ahead. And that was the fissure of saying, oh, wait. What I see in somebody else is not a pattern that I want to duplicate. Not that I have a judgment of my mother's pattern or the relationship. It works for them. They love it. My dad loves being like her conquering hero.
Yeah.
It's just not something I want for myself.
Yeah.
And so this is like a cluing in of something I need to hone in myself because I do ask my husband to ask for the proverbial fork.
Oh, okay. So you've caught yourself modeling that behavior.
Yes.
And you're like, wait,
because
I don't think I want to do it.
But this is what puts you in a place of judgment. Well, I don't ask for forks. But if I want my husband to see if there's an upgrade at a hotel, I'm like, ask if there's an upgrade.
Yeah.
I got a mouth.
Yeah.
I got a mouth.
We really could help each other.
Oh, girl.
Because you know what? It's like, I don't know that I want, but I would love to just take a little bit of that and be able to do it, to be like, can you ask if there's an upgrade? Can you make sure that they have the where I'm just naturally wired that I'm like, okay, here's my titanium number. Do we have an up? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm just like, I just handle it all.
I love that. It is so not me. It is so not me.
Isn't that crazy?
I know.
And it's just like, that's what's so cool about, like, it's no judgment. Like if you walked up and told, I would just, part of me would be like, oh, that's kind of nice. You know, and you'd probably see me do it and you'd be like, oh, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And so I think what's cool is that's what's the beautiful part is when you can appreciate other people's in their differences. Like, that's why when you said you don't have to like, I've always been from that school. Like, I don't care if you like me.
Yeah.
We can still have an intelligent conversation. We can actually disagree because I think when you disagree with someone, you learn a hell of a lot more than when you're in an echo chamber.
Yes.
So we can disagree, we can see, but that's how you grow.
Absolutely.
If every single person was like what you are with your husband and your mom, you would never have an environment of proof that there's an alternative that you might want to try.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's what's important about business. And I love talking to different people in business and their journeys because everybody does it a different way.
Yes.
And the audience is going to either relate to my story, your story, somebody else's story.
Right.
But that's the proof that they can do it because it relates to them where they are.
Absolutely. And it was George Washington, the founding father of this country, intentionally chose people who disagreed with his party's beliefs and filled them in the cabinet because he didn't want one country to be built one way. He wanted divergent perspectives. So I value if we actually don't see it the same way. It makes me stronger in my belief, or it makes me feel like I have so much respect for you because you are now helping me see it in a new way.
Yeah.
That's a win-win.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think that also gives people a little bit of freedom to try things.
And to
And
disagree.
again, you might embody this more independence and you're like, nah, I don't like that. I
Yeah.
would rather, what is it, Jay? What's your husband's name?
JD.
JD. I'd
Yes.
rather JD
Yes.
just do it for me.
Mhm.
And that's okay.
But I actually need
You
to do
have
the
to
work to
try
have
it.
an opinion.
That's
Yes?
right. That's
100%.
right. I always say, don't speak an opinion about something that you know nothing about. Go
Ooh,
try it.
yes.
See, try
Say
it
again
on.
slower.
See
Say it again slower. Say it again
Don't
slower.
have an opinion about something that you know nothing about.
Yes.
It's like you've got to try it on for size. You've got to see if you like it. You've got to be able to get and then have an opinion on it.
Absolutely.
But everyone out there just so desperately oftentimes wants a voice, and they're just words. It's empty
Yes.
words because they don't actually have any depth or experience in what they're talking about. And I think as buyers are becoming smarter in businesses, they're starting to sniff that out.
Oh, yeah.
They're starting to see who's real and who's not.
Yes.
And I think buyers are getting really, really sharp with business right now.
Yes, they are. I agree.
Have you seen in what you're teaching with entrepreneurs, how you're working with businesses, have you seen an evolution or evolving in marketing and in social media and some changes that you've seen in the last couple of years?
So it's going to be so much more important for people to not put their personal opinion about their preferred social platform and instead put themselves in the shoes of their buyer. And so oftentimes right now, at the time of this recording, TikTok and Instagram are going to be the two power players at the time. But that's really great if your demo is there. There is a huge demo that is better represented on LinkedIn, on even Snapchat, depending on what you're selling, on Facebook, on Reddit. And so I just want have a complete detachment of how you like to consume your content and instead drill down on who you're serving. And I think that the kindest thing any business owner could do is to really create an ideal client profile. Who are you going after? Yes, anybody with a credit card, theoretically. But when you hone your message and when you hone your marketing and when you hone your intentionality, you become unstoppable. You will gather other people in the process. But when you try to serve everybody, you serve nobody. When you go into 31 flavors, nobody is ordering vanilla. They're choosing a particular flavor that is better suited for them. So the more particular you are about that flavor, the more people are going to find that. They become evangelists of that. And then your marketing is no longer unidirectional, it's multidimensional because other people are talking about that flavor that you are serving them in a very particular way. So let's be less worried about the platform and then get platform specific around where your customer, client, or user is at.
I love that. And I 100% agree because I think I don't like TikTok. I don't use TikTok, so I don't want to post on TikTok. Well, if your audience is on TikTok,
yes.
If your ideal customer is on TikTok,
yes.
You better damn well be on TikTok.
Yes.
Because you can like Facebook because it's all of your childhood friends, but
yes.
if you don't have a brick and mortar in a local community, you're
yes.
most likely not going to do well on Facebook. Let's just call a spade a spade. If you have a brick and mortar, if you're service-based, if you are a chiropractor in healthcare or maybe like home services, you could do really well on Facebook because you're pulling from people within maybe a 15, 30-mile radius. But if that's not you and you are an international or nationally based, you've got to go to the platform. If you're serving under 24-year-olds, you better be on Snapchat.
Yep.
I would never want to be on Snapchat, but if that's who you're serving,
absolutely,
you got to figure that out.
Absolutely.
So I love that. I always say if you want to double your revenue, double your efforts, but if you know where to double them, you will end up tripling them.
Yes.
So I love that. So where can people find you? How can they find out more about all the things that you're doing?
Candy, thank you for this conversation.
Oh my gosh,
thank you for this space. Thank you for the opportunity to put a line in the sand. I think that the temptation for me is to, okay, I'll just say it. Act like everything, like every day is Saturday and every meal is Thanksgiving and we wake up and every day is Christmas Eve. And it's really hard running a business.
It is.
And we talk about resilience and we talk about getting up. And so I think that at the end of this conversation, what I so strongly want somebody to walk away from is that you and I talk about what it means to get back up. And I think that this conversation facilitated. Most of the time people come in and they're like, Jasmine, we really want to talk to you about social media. Great. I love it. Yes, social media is going to be putting gasoline on a flame. But if we don't have the flame, and that flame is that internal desire, that purpose, the fortitude to say, I'm going to get up again and again. Then when you put the gas on that fire, ooh, you're ready for it. But without that internal fire, and this conversation to me was establishing that it is hard and it is dark and it is lonely. And yes, you will fail. And if you choose and you're strong enough to change that failure into a lesson, and if you decide to get back up, and if you decide to stay consistent, and if you decide to stay determined, and if you decide to sit under the tutelage of people like you in this show, then we're going to be okay. And I just don't think that I've had a lot of space to say those things. So thank you for that.
Oh my gosh.
You can find me at jasminestar.com and Jasmine Star on every social platform.
I love that. Thank you for acknowledging that because I feel that is so incredibly important for people to understand that if you're feeling that you don't know what to do, or you are alone, or you just want to freaking quit sometimes,
Yes.
or that you feel like a failure, that you're not
Yes.
smart enough, welcome to
Welcome.
entrepreneurship.
Welcome, baby.
Like, you will always feel that way
Yes.
unless you want to stay exactly where you are. The only way to stay safe in entrepreneurship is to not grow, not change, not evolve.
Yes.
But if you, even tomorrow, decide that you want to build $1 billion company, the Jasmine now is going to be fearful, confused, alone, scared. And if you don't go back and look at all the proof of what you've already gone through, it's going to trip you up on your way.
Yes.
So I love that's why we call it the real story behind building businesses, because it is not all the flashy stuff. It is not smoke and mirrors. And there is not only just the two things between your brain, but a lot of your environment and your behavior and your past self will trip you up to becoming who you're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
So I love to be able to
Thank you.
share honestly. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being
Thank
real
you.
and bringing it. And we'll link everything below
Thank
in the
you.
show notes for
Thank
people
you.
to find you. But
Thank you.
thank you for being you. When we greeted each other, it was just so like honest and raw.
Yeah,
and
it was
so
real.
I
It was
love to
minute
meet women
landed.
like
Thank
that.
you.
So thank you for being you.
Thank you.